Seconds. Deputy Rabbitte.
Good morning, Minister, and thank you, Lasca. To ask the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs the status of the affordable childcare scheme and if you will make a statement on the matter.
Minister's 2 minutes.
Thank you, Deputy. That is the first question.
Question
29?
29.
I just have
29.
Sorry, that's a different question. That's okay, Deputy. Yeah, you have that later, I think. Excuse me. Yes.
On to the implications of the new after-school care regulations will have for schools and childcare providers, and her views on whether sufficient consultation was conducted with the affected groups. Thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. I signed important new regulations recently, which will come into force on the 18th of February. And these regulations will enable school-age childcare services to register with TUSLA in time to take part in the affordable childcare scheme when it opens later this year. This will make school-age childcare more affordable for many parents. The regulation of school-age childcare is an important measure to secure children's health, safety and welfare. The affordable childcare scheme will only be available to services that are registered with TUSLA, a critical quality assurance measure associated with the provision of state funding. I am conscious of the impact that the regulations will have on providers, and I have made provisions accordingly. With regard to registration, existing services will have 6 months in which to apply for registration with TUSLA if they are also registered as preschool services. Existing services that only provide school-age childcare will have 3 months in which to apply for registration with TUSLA. A person who proposes to set up a new service will be required to apply for registration at least 3 months before commencing the service. The regulations including the minimum ratio requirements of 1 adult to 12 children. They were developed following the advice of the School-Age Childcare Standards Working Group, which in 2018 submitted proposals for school-age childcare standards. Membership of the group included representatives from across the school-age childcare sector. In developing the proposals, the working group reviewed international evidence and practice. It was reconvened again for a further meeting with officials in September of 2018, during drafting of the regulations for consultation specifically on the adult-child ratio and outdoor space requirements. I acknowledge that some services may require additional time to adjust the minimum ratio of 1 to 12 children. Officials in my department have had discussions on this issue recently with a number of sector representatives, and as a result of these consultations, Deputy, I have decided to extend the commencement date of the minimum ratio requirements by 6 months, and I want to, Deputy, acknowledge your own representations in relation to this issue.
First question. 1 minute.
Thank you, Minister. And I suppose that's where I was starting, that I am not opposed to the measures to increase the quality of childcare, and I would have been one that would have been speaking for a long time in relation to the lack of legislation or regulation around the after-school sector. But I would have had a hesitation in relation to the quick delivery of the ratio of 1 to 12, because some of the services possibly mightn't have been working within that regulation. Because also it's going to take a list of time to register the services, I'm wondering, will we have enough staff within TUSLA to facilitate the applications that's going to come in? How are we going to monitor that the statement of purpose and function, complaints policies, policies on administration of medication, policy on infection control, policy on managing behaviour, fire safety, child safeguarding statements, safety statements, all of the regulations that we would expect to be adhered to, that will we be ensured that they will be inspected? Have we the staff to do that, Minister?
1 minute.
Thank you, Deputy. Just first in relation to the issue of the adult-child ratio that I've identified now as a change when that commences, so that services particularly, that's your first issue, will have time to prepare for that transition. And it will it means that they will be given until the 18th of August to become fully compliant with the specific requirements, irrespective of the date on which they register with TUSLA. And as I've said, I've now signed the necessary regulations. And furthermore, that public consultation is planned in the summer in advance of the development. I think the Deputy knows that we will be developing a fuller set of regulations that will replace those initial regulations, which will cover additional quality objectives. And then you raise the question in relation to TUSLA being ready in terms of this, and my understanding is that they will be and have been preparing for that regard, and that, that alongside of, obviously, we've taken a while to develop these regulations. A lot of people have been consulted, and that is all part of the preparation.
Final question.
Minister, I also am concerned or querying the role of the childcare, the city and county childcare in the delivery of this. Are they getting extra resources to ensure that all of those who decide to register and become compliant, that in relation to the policy and procedures, that would be a requirement? Is there going to be a standard template going to be rolled out to all after schools to support them, to actually everybody hits the same benchmark at the one time, that everybody would be on song by the 18th of August? And in my supplementary onto that as well, Minister, will you be seeking feedback from the providers and the parents as to what they think is sufficient in relation to ratio? Or I know the ratio set is 1:12, but when you have second and third class kids leaving a ratio of 1:26 or a 1:30 and coming back as a 1:12, I'm sure we would need to get some feedback in relation to that, Minister.
Final response.
Good questions, and I acknowledge your interest and representation in this regard, which really helps us do the work that we do. Your first question in terms of the county and city childcare committees, that's an excellent one. This is, as you know, is a significant change that we're bringing in for school-age childcare providers. And that, as I've already indicated, you're also aware that this has been a long time coming. There has been research that has been consulted as part of the working group, and that report has come out, and on the basis of that I have made my decisions and have continued to listen to the sector and have made some changes recently in that regard. It is the work of the county and city childcare committees in order to support providers in terms of the work that they do, and they would of course be aware of, and this is, in other words, there's a long lead in time, and this is what they should be doing, and I expect that that is what they will be doing. In terms of your question around feedback, as we progress to a comprehensive set of regulations, that question around the ratios I would expect and hope would be integral to that aspect.